Hey, you're listening to Fat and Greasy Citizens, a podcast about Shakespeare. I'm Fat.
And I'm Greasy. Every week we do a deep dive into every act of every Shakespeare play ever written, mostly while drinking.
More specifically, I'm Chuck. I'm a former English major and now a digital editor who cares a lot about Shakespeare.
And I'm Gabe. Let's do it!
Greetings, my knuckleheads. It is us, Queen Lizzie Uno, welcoming you to Fat and Greasy Citizens. This episode is all about the exciting conclusion of Comedy of Errors, in which all of the characters and mishaps come rushing back to converge on the same scene. I know you're wondering, hey, if this is a comedy, will there be a beheading? Yeah, it's Shakespeare, baby! Egeon, the Antipholuses' dad, is awaiting execution at the hands of the Duke of Ephesus. All the characters come back, the mother of the twins is revealed, and even though Egeon is saved once the errors of this comedy get resolved, the play has a touching yet woefully unsatisfying ending. Enjoy.
Okay, Act 5 of Comedy of Errors.
The exciting conclusion.
Which is just one big frickin' scene.
I'm trying to think of another Shakespeare play that does that, where Act 5 is just one big scene. Goes on for a long time.
Goes on
I was
for
actually surprised.
And also, it occurred to me that there's no reason for this to even be Act 5. Like, you could have taken the last 150 lines from Act 4 and added it onto this. So, effectively, like, you could just have a 600-line scene. That's not really a big recommendation for that, but it's all just, like, people in one place running into each other and realizing they're confused. So
yeah, this is like the end of Cannonball Run, where everybody's kind of converging on one place, and you know it's going to be a wacky final scene. Dom DeLuise is getting smacked in the face.
That Dom DeLuise would be wonderfully cast as one of the bondsmen, as they're called in this act. So it's not called them slaves. What I like, one of the things that so I read this act twice, as I usually do, and on the second read, it jumped out to me that so this is full of wacky hijinks and whatnot. But I think when you set up the stage for this, in some way you have to like, or you'd want to set up like some kind of execution paraphernalia, a gallows or a guillotine or something. And so you're gonna have all these funny things going around, but at some point you have to have people look around and be like, oh hey. That's where they kill the guy. Oh, there's the Duke, and they're gonna kill a guy. And so like, there's just all these wacky hijinks, but they have to like have at the very least a stump where Egeon's gonna put his head on to have his head cut off or something. And it's just, just seems par for the course.
Outside of the Abbey, as it were, right outside the nun house. There is just it's where you kill people.
It's great that right next to the Abbey is where you brutally murder people, and the Abbey is apparently like an impenetrable fortress with one way in and one way out. Because if anyone ever goes into the Abbey and then you see him somewhere else, you're like, "Are you a ghost? What happened? I saw you go into a building, and yet I'm seeing you here now." How? It's
it's funny you should mention the. It's funny that you should mention that there ought to be just gallows stuff there, because I made the mistake of watching the beginning of. I was curious the beginning of it on a streaming service, the BBC version.
Yeah,
I think it was made in like maybe 1980, maybe before, and they kind of did it like that, like the beginning where Egeon's doing his spiel. They it's almost as if the whole thing's taking place during a carnival, and like for no reason there are people like they're acrobats flipping around, and then out of those like people kind of just writhing in like this carnival atmosphere, they just all of a sudden the Duke shows up and they're saying we're gonna kill this guy. It's really weird, and it's like if I were watching that as an audience, you know, if I was watching that production, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, I like stuff like that before, where it's kind of let's pretend this is this is a play within a play kind of thing, but it just seems really lazy, you know. But as you say, you kind of do have to do that in this.
You either have
Egeon He had his head chopped off.
Yeah, you either have to just like completely ignore it or like make something of it and just like again, it's like if the Regal Beagle was right next to an electric chair or something. Like you just have to lay into it and say, "This is Three's Company with stakes" for some reason, or if Central Perk was right next to a guillotine or something.
That's how we do it in Ephesus. You know, we kill people next to the nun house.
That'd be great if Phoebe was just making jokes about people's heads flying off their bodies and rolling down the street. That's what I'm here for.
Bless them.
Okay, so digging into the super scene itself. Let's see. Out of the gate, I just liked. I liked so it opens up with two merchants. One of them's not called a merchant, but essentially they're both merchants, complaining to each other and basically restating the plot back to us, as saying like, "Yeah, he owes me a chain. I owe you money." And oh, there he is. And oh, let's go. They basically restate like all the things we've seen on stage. Then they go and they confront him. And I like that they one of them accuses him of lying about the chain, and then one of them accuses him of forswearing what he said about the chain, which is basically the same thing. And Antipholus says back to them, he says, "Yeah, I did not deny that I had the chain. I did not forswear that I had the chain." He almost just seems to be like talking down to both of them, and I like that out of the gate. Like this Antipholuses is just like, "You're stupid. You're stupid. I didn't do the bad thing the way you said it. I didn't do the bad thing the way you said it. You have offended me, so I will pull out my sword and try to murder one of you."
Especially seeing as like it's two guys now who seem like they're totally full of shit. Like I like the fact that Angelo is bringing in the second merchant into this thing. He's like, "You've not only dishonored me, but you've dishonored my friend here." You know, and like there's a really a great moment where it's kind of like, "Yeah," where like the second merchant is like, "Yeah, you did."
That guy refuses to get on the boat, and he's constantly like, "And I would be on a boat by now if it wasn't for this. It's only because I'm such a good guy that I haven't gotten on the boat. Like it's absurd that I haven't gotten on the boat." It's once again, we can all agree that like if I was a lesser man, I would have gotten on the boat, but here I am, not on the boat. It's just like, okay, like I got you, but
wandering
also
around like I said I was going to do for absolutely wandering into this town where I think it's weird, where everybody knows my name.
You might think that I've got nothing to do with my days, but I'm actually quite busy not being on a boat. It's absurd.
I should definitely be on that boat.
So they argue back and forth a little bit, and then basically, so Adriana, she shows up, as far as I can tell, with like an entire mob that just like will do what she wants to do. She reminded me of like the bad mom in South Park, the movie, Sheila Broflovsky, who just like somehow like gets a mob of people to do what they want to, and then they just kind of like run around saying argle bargle and are like ready to do violence. And so like she walks in, there's a sentient mob with her, and the first Antipholus and Dromio run into this abbey, but this mob never does anything, but they do exactly what she says throughout. And so it seems like something fun that you could play with, to just be like at various points she's like, "Stop, mob, listen to this, mob, do that." And it just has to be like 6 people on stage just like shuffling around like Muppets from place to place, just like grumbling to themselves and looking violent somehow.
And it's also, again, it's awesome the way Angelo and the second merchant are kind of folded into that fervor, because like their immediate reaction is, "Oh, he's crazy." Yeah. That explains it. You know, I'm sorry I took my sword out on the guy.
No, it's
because you know how those guys are. You know?
Yeah, no, it's the fact that it's weird that he's about ready to stab him. He's like, "Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I would have stabbed him because he was crazy." So they run into the abbey, and then the abbess walks out, which is a term that I needed to Google. I guess it makes sense that the woman who runs the abbey is an abbess, but I didn't know what it was.
The abscess.
So the abbess turns out to be both the Antipholus' actual mom, a twist which I actually found affecting. Like, I was like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming. That makes me happy. That's nice." But
yeah, that was a nice twist.
It's nicely foretold in that she plays entirely to the trope of the mother-in-law who will undermine the wife throughout. Like, she just shows up and she's like, "Oh, he's crazy." Well, how did he get crazy? And Adriana says, "Well, he's contradicting everything I say, and he's spending all this time with this prostitute." And she's like, "Oh, and then you harangued him about spending all that time with the prostitute, and then he got depressed, didn't he? And then he went crazy, didn't he?" See, you can't do that. You've got to keep him in line, but you can't be a nag. So I'm going to go fix this. I'll leave you alone. And it's just, once she reveals herself to be the mom, looking back, it all makes sense, because she's just like, she's doting on this man for some reason and undercutting Adriana, who is crazy, but also it's weird the way she just appears and starts like critiquing her as a wife who tells her straight out that he's violent and is sleeping around with a prostitute, but still somehow Adriana ends up on the lecturing end of it. I kind of feel for her.
Yeah, mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. Yeah, the abbess comes out swinging. You know, I like the as you say, like there's an instinctive relationship that the two of them have. The abbess's instinct is to immediately contradict whatever Adriana says. Like, well, you were too rough with him.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of A Terrible Boss, where she's like, "Okay, so tell me what happened," and she says all the terrible things she's done, and she's like, "Oh, well, you gotta take a firmer hand," and she's like, "I did within the limits of my modesty, so I harangued him pretty hard at home and like sent him signals out in public." And she's like, "Oh, you harangued him at home. I bet you kept him up at night. That's a terrible thing to do to a man. That will drive him crazy and also into the arms of prostitutes." And it feels like
you know how it is when you haven't had any sleep, so you immediately go out and get a prostitute,
start murdering people. It's also particularly effective because the abbess has this wonderful way of talking where she seems like the classiest woman in the room, and so like she seems like a nightmare of a person to have as a mother-in-law, talking down to you, because she constantly talks and like she almost sounds like royal. Like she's constantly talking in like highfalutin terms and whatnot, and Adriana is just relatively simple, and I don't know, like Adriana just gets the worst of it throughout this act. She gets bulldozed by everyone throughout, and thankfully that's okay, because she's kind of a nutter, but poor Adriana, nothing's going to work out for her.
No, but that's what I like about it is, the abbess's speech sort of betrays the fact that she's more important than she initially lets on.
Yeah.
That's cool. The idea that Shakespeare's giving a little hint that she's more than what she seems.
Yeah, she effectively walks out the door and like she's the most important person on stage, and so it feels cool and earned when she turns out to be the mom. And so I like so they're trying to. The abbess comes out. She says, "Nope, I'm gonna basically treat Antipholus and figure out what's wrong and treat him. So I'm going back inside. You all can wait out here." They're thinking of going to get the Duke, and then they realize the Duke is arriving, and they say, "Oh wait, this is the place where they kill people. Let's stay here and let's behold the death of this guy."
Kill people.
They've got a headsman, and they've got a guy who's probably going to be killed. It says, the stage direction says, his head is bare, so I don't know, somehow that signals that you're about to be murdered in Shakespeare Town. But they're all just like, "Oh, hey, all right, there's a lot going on, but let's stop and watch this guy get his head cut off. This should be interesting."
Yeah, it's a really awkward, like wonderfully awkward segue, because Adriana says something like, "Well, I'm just going to stay here and grovel at the foot of this abbey until my husband is let go," and then the second merchant says something like, "Well, it's almost 5:00. I think they're killing a guy in here.
We're right next to the head cutting place. Let's just tell you what. Let's not do anything rash. Let's let this guy get his head cut off, and just see what happens." So the Duke walks on stage and just announces to anyone who will listen that, again, I don't want to kill this guy. We would be happy to not kill him in front of you all right now if anyone wants to pay his debt. and he describes it as we'll do this because so much we tender him, which I love is like I guess a triple entendre, because A, like we feel tender towards him, B, legal tender is what you need to pay his debt, and then literally what he's saying is like, this is what we owe him. And so it's just like, it's a great mealy-mouthed way to just say like, oh, we love him so much, we'd hate to have to do this, but he literally is only worth legal tender. So if anyone wants to cough up some money, great. Otherwise, we're going to cut this dude's head off.
It's one of those moments where I wonder if Shakespeare was as clever as, you know what I mean? Like Shakespeare being Shakespeare, where he put a word in that has many different meanings. And then, like, you saw, you know, it's like when you go see a movie at, like, the Lincoln Center film hut or whatever it is. And there's always, like, guys with berets there. And they chortle knowingly at some lines.
Yeah.
You know, like, I wonder if that was for those, like, guys in the audience. Or it's like, tender.
That was 3 triple entendre. Oh my god!
You truly are a genius.
Getting Lincoln Center beret, sons of bitches.
And not long after the Duke does his thing, there's a messenger, and I love a good messenger in drama.
I come with expository dialogue of things which are interesting.
The messenger coming is never good. It's never a good sign. It actually reminded me a lot of in the final act of Oedipus Rex. It's the messenger who comes in and goes, "Oh my God, Cleopatra ripped her own womb out, and then Oedipus ripped his own eyeballs out. He's gonna be coming out soon, I swear to God. But oh my God, if you were only there, the horror." It's amazing to me that it's very similar, where the messenger goes, "Oh my God!" You know, he was going all over the place, and he set this one guy's beard on fire.
The sequence is fantastic because so he ties the guy up, he ties up Pinch, so he ties him up, he cuts his beard, sets his beard on fire, and then throws sewage at his beard to put the fire out. And this is because Pinch is treating him as if he's an insane person.
Yeah.
But just like that,
so good.
That sequence of events within like what you'd have to, I don't know how you'd even set someone's beard on fire, but to be able to do that, gnaw his way out of his bonds, and then tie up his doctor, then give his doctor a funny beard cut, which is not easy to do. Like, you try and give another man a beard cut, and people are going to say, "Oh, that's funny. I see what you did there. Now he looks a fool." Then set his beard on fire, then have access to sewage to just nail him in the face with. It's
like it takes advantage of the fact that the audience, can't see what happened. You know, the messenger can literally say anything.
No, it's like, I was going to say, I feel like they are a stand-in for special effects. Like, they walk in, they say, "There was a giant dragon, and it was the greatest fight anyone's ever seen." It's like Tenacious D's The Greatest Song in the World. Like, we're going to tell you that this was the best thing ever, and we all agree that we're imagining it right now, so it's almost as if it was on stage. But the greatest battle of all time, the most slapstick thing that's ever happened. I wanted to come and tell you all because we were originally going to put this on stage, and we don't have the budget. So then we wrote in a messenger.
So we're just going to tell you, like the importance of the messenger. Did you ever hear? I want to say it was Richard Harris. Richard Harris's story of playing the messenger in a production of Macbeth.
No.
It was either him or Peter O'Toole. I'm pretty sure it was Richard Harris. And he said when he was very young, he got into this production of Macbeth, and the guy who was playing Macbeth was also kind of directing it, and he was a real asshole, and like making the people who are not him suffer because they weren't stars like whoever this guy was.
Uh-huh.
And Richard Harris was playing the messenger. The messenger, importantly, the messenger toward the end of the play who comes in, Macbeth says something like, "How fair is the queen?" And the messenger, "She's dead, my lord," is the delivery, and you understand that Lady Macbeth is dead and all But Richard Harris said he was so angry at this guy that, he couldn't take it anymore. So like the one night, comes the big line, "How fares the Queen?" And Richard Harris says, "Oh, she's fine. She'll be out in a minute." and then he promptly went backstage out the door into a bar and started drinking. Like so much, and that's the thing, is that you often forget how important these messenger characters are until something like that happens, where it's like, "Fuck you." She's fine.
It's also in a way like terrible writing. Like what would it like? Imagine that like
Yeah.
Imagine that like Laertes like in Act 5 is just like, a messenger comes. Oh, it turns out Hamlet has died of poisoning, and so has the king, and so is his mother. Oh, woe is me. Well, so be it. Like, there's no reason, like, if given the ability to figure out, well, here's what we can put on stage and what we can't, to, like, have someone just come in and say things have happened off stage. That said, there's, I also, because I wish I could see this, because he also talks about how Antipholus slapped all the women in a row, and so it almost has to be like Three Stooges style, where you just like windmill across 5 people, but just the idea of somehow like lining up 5 women, just being like,
porcupine. Yeah, the visuals in that, like, that's a really fun role for like that. If you wanted to ever do any kind of stunt casting in this play, you have Chris Rock come out as the messenger, and he just like, it's like a really juicy, like, you just give him 3 minutes to embellish every word of this. Yeah, no,
you should make up the things every night. You should make up what he did to Pinch. You're never going to see Pinch again, so you can say anything, and so you should just like make up a different horrible disfigurement every night. And he also says, like, he's deranged. Adriana, he's talking about coming for you. He's talking about how he's going to disfigure you. And again, it's just like, this is an unnecessary amount of violence towards women. Like, we don't need to know that there's a guy prowling out there looking to disfigure his wife. Like, there's the whole thing about, like, setting Pinch's beard on fire is, like, slapstick. But he's out here and he's going to disfigure you. It's just odd and out of place.
It's really dark, that line.
Yeah.
It's like that, like the, the old urban legend of like the guy with the hook who's coming,
Yeah.
And when he turned around, it was the husband dangling from the tree. Like it's like there's no reason for the disfigurement part.
Which is
bad. Let's just put it that way.
He's bad, which is great because he shows up and he pleads to the Duke and says, Antipholus says to the Duke, like, no one. He sounds like the President of the United States. He's like, no one has ever been as put down as I have by my wife. It's unimaginable what I've gone through. And the Duke's like, what happened? And he's like, I was locked out of my home.
Yeah.
That's it. and I think she was in there with prostitutes. I don't have any proof of that, and also I have no reason to complain about that since I am known to consort with prostitutes. But like, he literally walks in and says, like, she's worse than the devil. I must have justice, and you won't believe what she did. I had to gnaw my way out of my bonds to get here, but I am here to get my revenge. And like, that's all he's got, is that she locked him out.
I kind of wish Antipholus of E's speech, because he recaps the whole thing.
The whole thing, top to bottom.
Who gave what to who. It would be great if that was done in like almost like a Tim Curry Clue type thing, and then he gave this to her.
Yeah. Oh God, that would be fantastic. Because it was.
She gave this to me.
That's such a fantastic like representation of how much like Tim Curry did with that role, which doesn't seem, which could be terrible in anyone else's hands, but also like, yeah, like it felt like in reading it felt like a rote recitation of the plot to date. But yes, someone running around and just like holding the chains and moving back and forth would be absolutely fantastic.
We all went to the kitchen.
But what I can't think is any way you could do that and not have it be the way the Duke perceives it, which is like a very smooth recitation of the facts. The Duke says, like, well, he can't be crazy. Did you see how clearly and calmly he just recited that? That even though he spends like 5 lines making fun of Pinch for being thin, he's just like, he's gaunt, he's skinny, his clothes barely fit. He looks like he's a threadbare juggler, which I think means he looks like a street performer. I'm not sure what it means, but
jugglers again.
It's just very bare threads. What
jugglers means like sins. The city. Remember Antipholuses?
Yeah, just full of jugglers.
Full of jugglers. And so's this quack of a doctor over here.
I bet he juggles on the side. I bet he juggles.
What are you, some kind of juggler?
I like that Dromio chimes in and just like reiterates that he gnawed through the rope. Like it seems like that would be something to be kind of, and that he gnawed through Dromio's rope as well. Which also, so we hear that Antipholus gnawed through his own bonds, and then we hear that he gnawed through Dromio's bonds. Once you've gnawed through one person's bonds, there is no need to chew through the second set. So it's, I don't know, it all seems to reinforce that he probably is a bit insane, get free and be like,
That's a funny idea, to gnaw through your own bonds and then immediately gnaw through the next guy. Like
just
free.
Right. From Dromio's point of view, just like, wait, couldn't you? Fine. You're just gonna smack me. So go ahead. You're right.
Dromio's, not the wisest anyway, so he wouldn't have stopped him. It might have been Dromio's idea. Okay, now do me.
Do me next. Do me next.
That's really funny. Yeah. And also speaking of things that like to all this rabble that has collected in front of the Abbey, it has occurred to no one yet that Antiphilus, we just saw the abbess go in saying he's in here, and then Antiphilus of E comes in. You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
well, yeah.
Nobody goes, hey, wait a second.
Well, 2 things. No one ever goes, hey, wait a second. But also, again, if you walk into an abbey, so if I was at your house and you went inside and then you walked up behind me, I wouldn't be like, are you a ghost? I would just be like, wait, that's confusing. I thought, but like everyone is just like, what? Their minds are completely blown, and they're assuming that he is somehow managing to teleport. And to your point, like I feel like it's compounded by like the gathered mob seems to react in the exact same way that Adriana does, or anything else. Like they're all just constantly shocked and confused about what's going on. And including Egeon, who like says to Antipholus, do you recognize me? I'm your father. He's like, I've never known my father. I don't know you. And Egeon goes on for like another 20 lines about saying like, oh, I must be so disfigured, and my own voice box must have fallen apart, that you don't know my voice or know my face or anything else. And it's just like, you've been on a mission to find this.
This is the guy who started out saying that he was looking for his long lost son. He's been doing it for 7 years, he said. So like he gets to the point where actually like, and even he doesn't fucking like nothing. The synapses don't
exactly
fire.
No. The only thing that I thought of there is that because the abbess comes out and she doesn't put it together either. She comes out and she realizes that Egeon is her husband, but she still puts fucking nothing together. She walks out and puts together that she sounds really smart. She puts together that Egeon is her husband. She tells everyone it's her husband. And it's at that point the Duke is like, wait a minute. I got it. And I have to think that to a certain degree, like, in this world, everyone thinks, like, the Duke has to be the one who like figures it out because it's going to be bad for like no one wants to be the person who like figures it out what's going on. But if the Duke figures it out, it's a party. But if someone else figures it out in some way, it's not going to work out because the abbess is presented as such an intelligent person. Egeon is presented as a relatively intelligent person. Like it makes no sense that everyone is kind of like seeing these facts again and again and being like, well, yeah, I'm assuming you are the twin I'm looking for. I know there are two twins. I know there are two slaves. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And so the only way I could think of to make it work is that like the Duke is just a dullard, but a dullard that everyone has to defer to like a head of state, because if it's not his idea, then for some reason like it will end poorly with you, because he is a head of state who will murder you if you don't pay your debts. So, which
they have said many, many times. The fun connection between what we were just talking about, Clue and the Duke, is that, as I said earlier, I was watching the BBC like 1980, maybe late 70s version of Comedy of Errors. And the guy who plays the Duke is the guy who plays the professor in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh yeah,
you know the guy. Yeah. The guy in. The narrator.
Okay.
In the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The guy, who they cut to sometimes. That's him. And of course, Tim Curry was in Clue. So there you go. The connection.
Did either of the twins look alike at all?
One of the twins is Roger Daltrey.
No one looks like Roger Daltrey. So
and some other guy. So like there's Roger Daltrey and then a guy who marginally looks like Roger Daltrey. Actually, I didn't get that far. I didn't get far enough. I could barely make it through Egeon's first monologue.
That sounds
tells the whole story.
Awful. God, that just sounds. Is it as bad as it sounds? Like,
I have to say that I didn't make it past Egeon because Egeon the whole time plays it like like we laughed at how he was ready for death, but he's so pitiful. Like the actor does it in such a pitiful manner.
Like, why won't my son remember me? Like, just kill me.
Well, he like if you were the Duke, you would. The story, like, you might feel sorry about the guy. It's like, for some reason, because it's this weird carnival atmosphere, the ground is a map of the Mediterranean Sea. So, like, as he's telling the story, these pantomime guys are, like, miming his story of the two sets of twins. It's, like, it's a little... like, I understand that his monologue is very dry, but I think they lean too heavily on, like, the visualization of it, because the guy actually delivering the words was putting me to sleep.
I can tell why you didn't get through it. That sounds atrocious.
I bounced before Roger Daltrey even took the stage. I was out of there.
That sounds. For some reason, when you first said Roger Daltrey, I heard Timothy Dalton, and I was like, "Oh, that could be interesting." No. But no, it's Roger Daltrey. No. So. Completely different acting chops.
I'd love to hear Timothy Dalton sing. What's oh God, I can't come up with a Who song fast enough.
Bob O'Reilly?
Yeah, there you go. That's a famous one.
That'll do.
But yeah, like I think that by the end of this play, like you're right. I mean, I think if you think about who Shakespeare was writing for, and eventually he becomes a darling of the aristocracy and the crown. So like the idea of the governor or the duke or whoever's in charge making it, making the proclamation that yes, we'll let's rejoice, is pretty common in these plays where it's like,
yeah,
we all defer to the higher power. Like they're never wrong.
Right. They're never wrong. And so I feel like there's one of two ways to do it. What jumped out to me was that the abbess, since the abbess seems so wise and poised, and she always kisses the Duke's ass before she says anything. She's always like, "Oh, wise Duke, you who know everything." And so it could be that she is being traditionally deferential to an authority figure in a Shakespeare play, or it could be that she is smart and knows that, like, this is the guy who defines reality in this town, and so you always lead by kissing his ass, and then you, like, give him a breadcrumb trail of how to get there. But I think the more likely answer is that just, yes, it's a Shakespeare play where they are saying that the authority figure who's a stand-in for the king is, like, infallible and is the voice of justice. But I think you could make it work.
Let's have a party. If he didn't put it together, it would have been, let's put them to death.
Let's have a death party.
I'll have the heads of everyone. 2 sets of twin heads.
Yes, but if I was casting it, it would be Jeff Goldblum in Thor Ragnarok. Just wait.
As the collector. No, he's not the collector in that. That's Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, no, that's with the melting stick, where he's just constantly murdering people, but getting offended when people. He gets offended when these slaves are called slaves. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So the Duke figures it out for everyone, and then Adriana says, like, she turns to one of them, and I can't remember if she's turning to the right one or not, and it doesn't even matter because she turns to them and she says, "Are you my husband?" And he says, "No, I say nay to that," which is just wonderfully redundant. Just like, "No, I say no." And then she turns the other one, and then he says, "Yeah, I also say no." And she has no more material lines on this issue, so we don't know if she ever knows which one is her real husband. But she knows that 2 men who she'd like to be her husband are both just like, no. And the play does not care if she ever figures it out. It's just that they're
both are going to be her husband tonight.
I just, no, I say nay to that is just great. Like, no. And in case no is in some way unclear, I Antipholus, say no to the idea of being your husband.
And to that end, what's interesting is that, and I'm trying to think of the ends of other Shakespeare comedies where they're like obvious couples at the end of the play, where you, like, people find each other and you can say, oh, they're going to get married. But this one's kind of doesn't end like that. It's more like we don't know if Adriana ever actually figures it out, or if Luciana is going to end up with Antipholus of S.
Luciana,
we don't get any of that information.
She never gets a line. Antipholus of S turns to her and he says, like, I meant everything I said, and I hope you feel the way I do. On to the next character. we get nothing.
And they're out of there. Yeah. And then they all go in for the party, and what I think is especially touching is ending it with the Dromios.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that, because that's kind of not how these normally go. It's normally like maybe the lovers have a last line, or the fill-in for the king has a final, and to everyone a happy day, or something. Like there's always kind of like a proclamation, but this one ends very quietly and sweetly with the 2 Dromios kind of going in together. I almost pictured them holding hands, as they go in. It was adorable. It was a very cute ending.
It is adorable. The entire end of it is about friendship. I completely agree. I found it at first. The handoff I found condescending, because one of the Antipholuses turns to Dromio and says, like, he's your brother, you should be friends with him or something. And it's just like, just shut the fuck up. You've been beating this guy the whole time. But then they are really nice and tender to each other. They start a little pseudo argument about which one of them is older. But I agree. It's nice. And they are the only ones on the stage at the end. The mob leaves to go to dinner. Then the brothers leave, and then it's just the 2 of them. And just the visual of, like, having them be the last 2 on stage, I really like. It's interesting, since there's no marriages, like, it's just a series of, like, friendly partings toward the end. So we don't establish if either of the sisters are going to end up with these guys. They walk off stage. The mom and the dad walk off stage to just join the party with the Duke. The the prostitute is just like, you owe me my ring. And he's like, you're right, I do. Here's your ring. And that's the end of that conflict. Like, there's no domestic farce. There's no domestic farce around anything there. And, like, again, it's just like the prostitute throughout is written the exact way you would write friend. Like, there's no... You can read into it and make it as horny as you want, or you could just make it be friend who wants her ring back, but gives the ring. Yeah,
lady who everybody seems to call a prostitute.
And there is no scene between the brothers where it's just like, you are me, I am you. I always hoped you'd be out there or anything. It's just they're just like, oh, hey, cool, great, let's go to dinner.
Not even Egeon going to the abyss, going like, so you didn't ever want to take a look for me?
I wandered for 7 years.
Like, I wandered around for 7 years looking for the two of you, and you never got the urge. Okay.
Seems like you're doing pretty well here. You got a whole abbey to yourself. I've been wandering so much that Father Time has put crags in my face and changed my tongue. But you, I guess you got a nice piece of real estate here. You got the guillotine right next door. It's nice. I'm happy for you.
You just got here and stayed put, huh? That's what you did?
Just the ship broke in half and you thought you'd just stay in a town where anyone from outside that town gets murdered. Okay.
Yeah, okay, cool. No, hey, I'm just, just talking. Let's reminiscing.
No, hey, a meal's a meal. Let's go. That's... There's
one final dig. What I'm taking as a dig, though, at the Dromios, I think the abbess, she's talking about how her two sons are reunited, and then she turns to the Dromios and says, in these calendars of their nativity, like, to me, it's like, and you two are reminders that they were born.
It's
like this idea, like, oh, my two sons, and you two, who I remember the date every time I look at you when they were born.
It is.
They're just place markers, for the sons.
It is. Yes, it is bizarre to, again, I just feel like she's like a queen who like will always see herself as such, and just to say that, like, since you age at the same rate they do, you're like a calendar. It's just like
yeah. They're not special, they're just reminders of the suns.
Yeah, no, what is special about them is that they age and that they will always be like, 4 months younger than the suns. So then you know how old the sun is because you just had 4. So that's why we keep them around, because they're like human hourglasses. We just watch them die, and yeah, it's super odd.
Maybe that's why the one Dromio is so obsessed with time. Maybe this is what it's all coming.
Because he's just a calendar.
Editor's note. At this point, a child who was watching Jurassic Park interrupted the recording. Here, Chuck brings the conversation back around, imagining a messenger character in that same film.
It should be a messenger just walk in Jurassic Park, but with messengers. Just running. Oh my goodness, he was a bad man, and he ran off the road and he tried to fix it, and he thought he got it. He thought it was going to be all fixed, and then he saw a small dinosaur, and he thought it was a nice dinosaur. But then it spit at him, and he was blinded, and he's running in the rain, and then he gets in the car, and the dinosaur's in the car. Anyways, that's what I wanted to tell you.
Every time I think of Jurassic Park, I think of there's an episode of Peppa Pig where they go to Potato City.
Yep.
And Mr. Potato has, for some reason, a dinosaur ride, and it's got 2 dinosaurs, and I can't remember which 2. One's a Triceratops, and I think maybe one's a Brontosaurus. I can't remember. But he says something like, "This is what they would have looked like millions of years ago." And then there's a little elephant called Edmund Elephant who is a know-it-all, and he says something like, "No, it's not." and he goes, "What do you mean?" He's like, "The Brontosaurus lived during the Jurassic period. The Triceratops didn't live into the Cretaceous period. They would not have walked together." And he goes, "How do you know this?" He's like, "I'm a clever clown."
I know exactly the scene you're talking about, and I love it so much because what's his name? Is it Mr. Potato?
Mr. Potato, Mr. Potato.
Mr. Potato he has no awareness of things. Like, he just accepts everything around him as reality. And whenever someone brings up a new fact, he's just like, really? I didn't know that my life is a lie. That's so interesting. I'm just a brand. You understand that whenever Mickey Mouse is dropped into a cartoon, he thinks it's real too. Our entire understanding of reality has been completely destroyed, so I assume my rides are all scientifically true.
No, everything is criticized. I think one of the kids asks him why there even are dinosaurs at Potato City.
And he's like, I don't know. Let's go.
He says something like, well, children like dinosaurs. It's just like, it's obvious. Why are we even talking about this?
He's so happy, and you could tell that he would just, like, I don't know. He's like the embodiment of, like, someone really happy working at an evil corporation. He's just like, I don't know. Why should we let truth get in the way? It's Potato City. It's where the magic of vegetables comes to life.
Oh, I'd love to see a nasty press conference with, like, how can you explain, Mr. Potato, that
what do you mean?
100,000 of your potatoes I've known to be full of blight, and I don't know.
We should fix that. Yes, you should. That's your job as Mr. Potato.
Potatoes are delicious.
I agree. We should make the dinosaurs fix it. There are no actual dinosaurs at your park. What do you mean? What about the one on the roller coaster?
But they move around.
To be clear, do you think the dinosaurs are real? Potatoes are delicious and nutritious. I just want to talk about vegetables.
And then he goes backstage, and there's a solitary sound of a click of a gun. And a single gunshot rings out.
What have I done?
Take it. He can't handle reality, Mr. Potato.
Have I been living a lie? Is this all just some kind of capitalist scheme? I just wanted to tell the children about potatoes.
I mean, this has everything to do with Comedy of Errors.
Yeah, no, it's...
Would you do Comedy of Errors today? Would you put it up? Because it's one of those ones that really, it's not as like it doesn't have any crazy controversial things like the other two we've done so far.
I would
not a rape or any kind of questionable,
Yeah, I think the biggest reason I wouldn't do it is just because there's not enough that's narratively interesting about it. I think if you wanted to overcast it, you could make this really fun to watch. But if you are in any situation with the cast of your dreams, be that local theater or you were putting something, on in London, if you had the cast of your dreams, why wouldn't you do any of the other Shakespeare plays? So, like, right. I think it could totally be done. And I guess if, like, I'm glad that we read through it. I'm glad I know how it works. But I would only do it because I'm trying to do every Shakespeare play. So, like, if my job was to be at the Royal Shakespeare Company, yeah, in year 15, I'd do it. But the idea of anything in here being like, oh, no, I'm going to put a year of my life into making this everything it can be. I think I'd have to do a pretty hard pass on. What about you?
The more I think about it, the more I think that I think the main problem is because you've got essentially a split protagonist. You've got ostensibly two protagonists in the two Antipholuses, and I think that's a problem. And I think from an audience standpoint, you kind of need a central protagonist to hang your hat on. Like you have to have somebody has to have a journey, and nobody really does. In this, maybe the Dromios have an actual journey because they land somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like
the Antipholuses don't really land. Like maybe Egeon is
I think
the person who has like an arc.
I think the only reason to do this is the same reason that you filmed Three Stooges. It's not to have an arc. The Three Stooges are who they are at the end of the picture. And I feel like you'd want to do the same thing here. Like if you felt like you could have enough fun with this, then you'd do it. But no, they're not the Antipholuses are not terrible people, but they're not great, and they have no growth throughout, and they lean on violence a lot, and so I don't see how you could. There is nothing like a cartoon. There's nothing to hang your hat on, unless there's just interesting stuff happening every 10 seconds. So you'd have to get through it in 75 minutes. And so, like, if you decided that you wanted to mess around with the last act so that you could have one actor play both Antipholuses and have one actor play both Dromios, then maybe, like, it could be madcap enough, and, like, that would be the review. Like, I can't believe everything that actor did in 75 minutes. Like, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they managed to get, like, the wardrobe changes that fast or anything else. I don't know. It was amazing that you could tell which character he was playing. But otherwise, I like, without some kind of non-narrative hook, I think there's no growth to, like, get pulled in by. To your point, like, the characters don't do anything. I think Adriana and Luciana are interesting, but they don't have enough to do to stick around for.
Yeah, they don't. Well, none of their stories are really finished. I mean, the Dromios kind of get the most satisfying finish, where it's kind of like, here are two beaten slaves, really, that end up finding the only other person who's going to be kind to them, maybe. Yeah. Like, if you really wanted to have a saccharine end, and give the audience something to some kind of satisfying ending, like, maybe you go that direction where these two poor dopes actually get some kind of good ending, because it just kind of ends, everybody kind of goes, oh, I get it, and then they leave.
Yeah, no, I think, and the only way you could pull that off for me in the audience was if you found some way to give them stage direction where you feel like, oh, they finally met someone who understands them, who understands their pain, and they take one look at each other and they both agree they're going to kill everyone at this party. Like, they're going to go in and just, like, you pick up a prop that just says poison, and you're like, let's go to the party.
That would be really funny. The last thing you see is just a couple of chainsaws go into an abbey.
And, like, when they come out for the curtain call, like, all the other actors could be dismembered or have X's on their eyes or something, but you could just in some way convey, like, yes, the Dromios killed all these people. This is an awful town. It is all to the good that the Duke and this family was murdered in cold blood. But that's probably not what people are going for. That doesn't sound like a comedy of errors. That sounds like a murder at dinner. So
this whole thing was a comment on capitalism, and then you have like a really serious discussion afterwards to ruin everybody's night.
Actually, hold your applause. We want to
comedy of errors.
We're going to go right into the tree ties after this. Let's start a conversation about, like, what? Yeah, that sounds awful. So,
I've actually been to a few, a couple of years ago. I can't remember what was going on in the world, but I saw, like, 2 or 3 Broadway shows relatively close to one another. There was something going on because one of the main characters coming and going, like, settle down, and then, like, giving, like, a small speech about this one, like, political or, like, socioeconomic problem. I can't remember what it was. I wish I could. But, like, each one of them did it, and it really is kind of like it does take the wind out of the audience.
Yeah.
Like, it really is kind of like, oh, I was feeling good about Hamilton, but now I feel sad.
I was just thinking about Hamilton because, like, I think literally the only time it's okay to do that was, like, Mike Pence went to see Hamilton, like, a week after he got elected. Mm-hmm. And at the end, they were just like, we want to make sure you understood the undercurrent of this show. And that's, like, literally the only time is right after you elect a bigot to be that powerful, and he's in the crowd, and your show was already about celebrating immigrants. It can't be, like, Hamlet, and then you
direct eye contact with Pence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's, like, if you have the opportunity to, literally speak truth to power in that moment, I mean, why wouldn't you take it?
but not in your general Comedy of Errors production. So,
before you go home, I just wanted to talk about the plight of wells in Syria. Not Syria. Oh shoot, Sudan.
I'm sure the wells in Syria are not doing well either. Don't worry. They just had a pseudo-nuclear blast downtown. So,
yes. I so often mix up Sudan and Syria in my head that I'm ashamed to be a human being. But they both have their problems. Maybe that's why I mix them up, and they both begin with S.
I'm glad that you hate yourself about this.
Is this the privilege that people are talking about? Is this the bubble that people are talking about? You know, one last note about the bubble is if you've been listening so far, folks, I was teaching. I was teaching in Long Island for a couple of years. No longer have that position, but I used to tell them. I used to tell my students in Long Island a true story that only happened a handful of years ago. And just talking about Hamilton, when you think about it, is that I can't remember the name of the production. It might have been something like Once, where like there's like a realistic house / establishment set on stage, and this kid, not kid, he's like in his 20s, maybe 30s. Crawled up on stage and plugged his phone into one of the outlets. A non-working outlet. It's just a set piece, and he was asked to leave. And it did not shock me in the least that man was from Long Island. He was genuinely confused as to why he was being escorted out of the building, and he was, I don't understand. Well, you crawled up on stage, sir.
Let me start by...
He said he genuinely did not know he was doing anything wrong.
Sir, just to back up, you were told on the way in to not use your phone. Clearly you used your phone, but then on top of that, you used your phone so much.
Using it, I plugged it in. That's what I do when I'm not using my phone. I plug it in.
What? Oh, wait, 1 second. They're telling me I'm not supposed to take calls during the show. Why? I can't. You got a problem with telephones? What's... Oh, okay.
I don't know. This guy's looking at me. He's saying he's the Merchant of Venice or something.
Honestly, there's a couple of jokes in here I think you'd like, Tommy. I tell you what. Hey, give this guy the business. You know what I mean. It reminds me of that guy Ben. Yeah, you know Ben. All right, so what if we start ranking them by, like, would you want to actually put a production on? So far we've done Comedy of Errors, Two Gentlemen of Verona, and Taming of the Shrew. So let's go. Do you want to go worst to best or best to worst?
Let's go worst to best.
Okay, so worst one to put on.
Oh, the one I'm least interested in?
Yeah, the one that you personally would be least interested in putting on.
I could tell you my three right now.
Go.
My number 3 would be Two Gentlemen of Verona. I think there are too many problems with that, both structurally and content-wise.
Uh-huh.
Then I would say Comedy of Errors, just because there's no protagonist. Like, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
And then I think Taming the Shrew, from like a modern standpoint, I think you have more opportunities for critique in there.
Yeah.
I just think it's more interesting as a piece of, like a piece of cultural history that so fundamentally clashes with today. I think it would be provocative. Other than that, I think that's the only reason why I would do it.
Yeah.
Or rank it as number 1, I should say.
I think I agree. I'd say Two Gentlemen of Verona, like, you could make it interesting, but you'd really have to gin it up somehow. And then Comedy of Errors as number 2, again, like, I think the only way to do it would be to do it in a tight 70 minutes and have people doing insane things the whole time, try and make it a cartoon. And Shrew, it's interesting because everyone comes in knowing that, like, well, this is going to be difficult, and they'll have to find some way to rework it, and so you'd have to rework it. So, yeah, like, you'd have your work cut out for you with Shrew. It strikes me as, like, the kind of... It's not going to be anywhere near the top of the heap, but it's interesting enough, and there's enough to tackle there that it actually is worth thinking about how you could do it, and like the issues in it around like male toxicity are salient enough that it's worth trying to take on, even though there's a good chance that there just isn't enough there in the text to make it work. So
there's some. It's funny. I before I looked at the Comedy of Errors. On that streaming service, I looked at. I continued watching a little more of John Cleese's Petruchio and Impending the Shrew, and they did some pretty interesting things, especially in the one scene where he brings Kate back to his house, and it's almost like it was almost like in a dark bunker that they set it in, and his all of the guys who work for him are like are cowering in fear of his tyranny. In fact, there was this one old guy who just kept whimpering the whole time as John Cleese is just like shouting. It was amazing. And then as soon as Kate's running around defending, like,
yeah,
don't be so harsh on these people. And it made it so much more clear that, this is Petruchio kind of like, it's all for Kate's benefit. And as soon as Kate leaves the room, John Cleese just kind of, he sits at this table and he very quietly delivers that monologue about, so have I laid my plan or whatever it is. I've set this in motion. And he very quietly does it to this candle on the dining room table, and it's amazing. It like all of a sudden he just becomes a different person, and then you realize through the direction and John Cleese's performance that this whole thing is a charade, and it's really well done. It's worth seeing. I was so stunned by the transition that I was like, wow, that's about as clear as that scene's going to get.
That's A, that sounds awesome, and B, just him living in like a dungeon type place just completely makes sense. It reminds me, I was just really reading a snippet of some article, and someone who was on The Apprentice said they were shocked when they went into Trump Tower that the place was just a dump, except the places where they would shoot the show. So you would shoot the externals, and then you would shoot what's supposed to be the boardroom and whatnot. But everything else was just like a complete dump. And for a guy who like has this god-awful photo shoots where you like literally have a gold toilet, or you have like a 3-year-old boy like sitting on a carpet made out of some endangered animal or something, it was just amazing. You could tell it's all for the cameras, and this place is just an absolute dump. And yeah, and Petruchio reminded me of the president throughout that play, so that makes a lot of sense.
It's like, was it John Mulaney has a bit about how Trump's idea of wealth is what like a hobo's, like an old-timey hobo's idea of wealth is. It's like, if I had $1 million, I'd get a gold toilet. Like just crazy shit like that. It's just like, what are you talking about? I'd have my name in big gold letters.
That's you want to know how fucking big time I am? I shit on gold. What? Why? Is that healthy? Are you supposed to have gold that close to your skin? That much of it? How do you clean it? Why'd you want to?
It's such a soft metal. Why would you want that? Would you want like a stainless steel? Hell, prison toilets.
Really, like a cold metal on your ass every morning? That's what you want? Yes. Super classy. Isn't that like 3 times as bad as germs? Yes, I'm terrified of germs. That's why I have a metal toilet.
Did you you know I was the only child of my father, Henry VIII, to not contract his syphilis? I just read that fun fact in a book about me. I wanted to connect that to the idea of gold-plated toilets, but I think we're past jokes now I know Daddy gave the whole fam the French disease. You see what I did there? Because the French are pigs. I'm not a racist. Fat and Greasy Citizens is presented by the players Chuck and Gabe. Theme song, A Robust Crew by Darren Curtis. Next week, A Midsummer Night's Dream.